You are still here. That matters more than you know right now. Maybe you opened this at 2 a.m. Maybe you are sitting somewhere quiet, in a room that feels too small, with a mind that will not slow down. Maybe you have been struggling for a while now, and somewhere along the way you stopped telling people about it, because explaining it got exhausting, because most people do not really understand, because the words stopped coming out right. So, you carry it alone, and that silence, that specific kind of silence, is what I want to talk about today. Not the silence of peace, not the silence of rest, but the silence of a person who is trying to hold themselves together and wondering how much longer they can keep doing it. I want you to know something before we go any further. I am not going to tell you that everything is going to be okay. I am not going to promise you that if you just believe hard enough, things will magically shift. I am not going to shout at you with energy that feels hollow. What I am going to do is sit with you in this dark, quiet moment and speak to you honestly. Because that is what you actually need right now. Not hype, not false comfort. Honesty. So let us begin. You are broke, maybe not just a little short, maybe genuinely, deeply struggling. Maybe you look at your phone and avoid certain numbers. Maybe you feel the weight of what you owe or what you cannot afford, pressing down on your chest every single morning before you even get out of bed. And it is not just money, it is what the money represents, the options it closes, the freedom it removes, the way it quietly shrinks your world. And you are tired. Not just the kind of tired that sleep fixes. You know that kind of tired. This is something heavier. This is the tiredness that comes from months of pushing forward without seeing results. The tiredness that comes from being strong for too long without anyone being strong for you. The tiredness of hoping, and having that hope quietly disappointed again and again, until hoping itself started to feel like a risk you could not afford. And you are alone, maybe surrounded by people who do not quite see what is happening inside you, or maybe genuinely, physically alone, with only your own thoughts for company. And those thoughts, they are not always kind, are they? At your lowest, your own mind becomes your harshest critic, reminding you of everything you have not done, everything you should have done differently, every opportunity missed, every mistake made. A quiet, relentless voice that never quite goes silent. I know this. Not as a theory, as something real. This space you are in right now, this particular kind of pressure, it is one of the most difficult places a person can find themselves. And the reason it is so difficult is not just because of the circumstances. It is because of what those circumstances do to your identity. When you cannot provide for yourself, when you are isolated, when you are exhausted, you start to quietly wonder whether the problem is not just your situation. You start to wonder whether the problem might be you. And that is the thought I want to address right now. Calmly. Directly. The situation is not proof of your worth. Your current conditions are not a final judgment on what you are capable of becoming. They are data. They are information about where you are right now. Not where you will always be, but the way forward. And this is important. The way forward requires you to see them clearly. Not to catastrophize, not to minimize, but to see them clearly. Because most people in your position do one of two things. They either collapse inward, they withdraw, they stop trying, they numb themselves. With screens, with distractions, with substances, with anything that creates distance between them and the weight of their reality. And this is understandable. When pain is relentless, numbness feels like mercy. But numbness also delays, and every day spent avoiding the reality is a day that reality remains unchanged. Or they burn with frustration. They rage at the situation. They blame circumstances, people, systems, not entirely without justification, but in a way that keeps them fixed in place. Anger without direction is just energy that exhausts you, and you are already exhausted. Neither path leads anywhere good. There is a third path, and it is quieter than both of those. It does not feel dramatic. It does not feel heroic. It feels almost uncomfortably ordinary. But it is the only path that actually leads somewhere real. It starts with acceptance, not resignation. There is a difference. Resignation says, "This is my life, and nothing will change." Acceptance says, "This is where I am right now, and I am going to work with what is real, not with what I wish were real." Acceptance is not comfortable. It asks you to stop arguing with reality and start engaging with it. And for many people, that step alone, that one shift in orientation, is the beginning of everything. Now let me say something that might sound strange. Being alone in this particular season can actually be useful. I do not mean this to minimize the pain of isolation. Loneliness is real. The absence of support is real. But when the noise of other people's expectations, opinions, and energy is removed, you are left with only yourself. And while that can feel terrifying, it can also force a kind of clarity that company rarely allows. You cannot perform for anyone right now. You cannot pretend. You cannot distract yourself with the needs of others or the dynamics of groups. You are left with the simple, quiet question, who am I actually becoming? And being broke, as suffocating as it feels, strips away a certain kind of fog. When resources are scarce, the trivial falls away. You stop spending energy on things that do not matter. You are forced into a kind of brutal prioritization. What actually moves the needle? What actually builds something? What is performance, and what is real progress? Scarcity, for all its difficulty, has a way of cutting through noise. And being tired, genuinely tired, reveals what you truly value. When you have no energy left for pretending, what remains is what matters. The things you still show up for despite the exhaustion. The things you still think about despite wanting to stop. Those things are telling you something about where your real energy wants to go. I am not romanticizing suffering. Suffering is not noble in itself, but I am saying this. The conditions you are in right now, as painful as they are, contain within them information and pressure that, if directed correctly, can produce something in you that easier circumstances never could. The question is not whether this season is hard. It is. The question is what you are going to do with it. And here's where I need to be honest with you, in a way that some people find uncomfortable. No one is coming. I mean that gently, but I mean it completely. No person is going to arrive and reorganize your life for you. No circumstance is going to suddenly align itself and make everything easy. No external force is going to solve the internal work that only you can do. This is not cruelty. This is simply how rebuilding works. It is personal. It is quiet. It is yours. And the moment you stop waiting for rescue, the moment you truly absorb the fact that the movement has to come from you, something shifts. It is not comfortable. It can actually feel lonely at first, even more lonely than before. Because with rescue as a possibility, there is always something to wait for. Without it, there is only what you do. But that shift, that removal of the waiting, is also when real movement becomes possible. So what does rebuilding actually look like? It does not look like a dramatic transformation. It does not look like a single powerful decision that changes everything overnight. I know that is what we are drawn to. The idea of a turning point, a moment, a revelation that reorganizes everything. Those moments exist, but they are almost always recognized in hindsight. From inside them, rebuilding looks much smaller than that. It looks like learning something. One small thing, every day. Not a full course, not a 10-year plan, just feeding your mind something useful and new. Skills that are genuinely applicable to work you want to do. Knowledge that makes you more capable, more valuable, more equipped. 15 minutes of focused learning, done consistently over months, changes what you know how to do. And what you know how to do changes what you can offer. And what you can offer changes your options. It looks like controlling what you put into your mind. This is something most people underestimate. The content you consume, the conversations you have, the narratives you repeat to yourself, these are not passive. They shape your emotional baseline. They shape how you interpret events. A mind that is constantly fed helplessness, comparison, and outrage becomes helpless, envious, and angry. A mind that is fed stories of people who rebuilt from nothing, ideas that challenge you, and quiet evidence that progress is possible, that mind begins to operate differently. Not because of magic, because of what we practice. We become. It looks like keeping a short list of small, non-negotiable actions. Not 100 goals. 3, maybe 4. Things you commit to regardless of how you feel, regardless of whether you are motivated. Motivation is unreliable. It rises and falls with your mood, your sleep, your circumstances. It is not a foundation. Discipline is a foundation. And discipline is not the same as harshness. It is simply the practice of doing what you said you would do, even when part of you does not want to. And over time, that practice builds something in you that is hard to name but easy to feel. A quiet solidity, a sense that you can trust yourself. I want to talk about progress for a moment, because this is where many people lose their way. Progress in a rebuilding phase is almost invisible in the short term. A week of good habits looks exactly the same as a week of no progress from the outside. And sometimes it feels the same from the inside too. You do the things, nothing dramatic changes, and the temptation is to conclude that the things are not working. But progress in this phase is compound. It accumulates below the surface. The changes happening in you, in your discipline, your knowledge, your habits, your nervous system are real even when they are not yet visible. And at some point, and you cannot always predict when, something breaks the surface. An opportunity arises that you are now prepared for. A decision is made differently because you have been practicing different thinking. A skill that has been quietly building reaches a threshold of usefulness. But none of that happens if you quit during the invisible phase. Stay in the invisible phase. Do the work. Trust the accumulation. Someone who stayed in the invisible phase, who kept doing the small things when there was no reward for it, who learned to sit with discomfort without being destroyed by it, who chose, again and again, in ordinary moments with no audience, to build rather than collapse. That version also exists. That version is also available to you. It requires no dramatic transformation. It requires only the decision, made daily, to move. This phase will either break you or build you. And that is not decided in one moment. It is decided in thousands of small moments. In the choice of how you spend the next hour, and the next, and the next. You are still here. That is not nothing. That is the beginning. Now rebuild. Comment below, I will rebuild myself.